On this Alabama adventure, we go back in time some 40 plus years. If you remember, on one of our last videos, not the last one, but one pretty close to the last video that we did, I mentioned about a policeman having a Bigfoot sighting up at Pleasant Grove Church one morning, and he and the guy that was with him became real frightened, and they took off in the car, and in just a little short distance, the man that was in there said they were over 100 miles an hour as they were coming into Wadley. And there's some sharp curves as you come into Wadley, and that was extremely dangerous that morning, not only for them, but also for people walking to school, driving to school, and just out on the road that morning. And I had several of my viewers, wish I could call your name, but I try to keep people's identities as secret as I can. But you'll know who you are whenever you see this video. I had a couple or so viewers to say that reminded them of Barney on the Andy Griffin Show, or Buford T. Justice in the movie Smokey and the Bandit. And we have had some policemen here in Wadley that would remind you of that over a period of time. This is a little story I'm going to tell you about a policeman and an event that unfolded early one morning. He quit and left town that very same day. And so I want to relay that story to you. It's kind of a little funny story, but we need to break up being so serious about Bigfoot and other paranormal stuff. A lot of people I know get so obsessed with Bigfoot that that's all that's on their mind, and one person in particular is really having some problems because they have become so obsessed with Bigfoot. But anyway, this will break up the Bigfoot stories for a little bit, and it'll kind of be an amusing story to you, I think. What I did yesterday was I went down to the old place where this happened. To me and another gentleman, we were at work one morning, and we worked at a shirt factory. I worked there some 20 years with this man. And anyway, I'm going to tell you what happened to us that morning. And then in the next segment, I'm going to tell you what we found out later that day, and for the next few days, what actually happened that morning. But anyway, just sit back, and you might want to get you something to drink or something to munch on while I'm telling this story. I hope it don't get real long, but it's a pretty funny story once you find out exactly what happened that day. Now, the reason I was telling you that where we worked in a shirt factory that was located here in Wadley, and a lot of people in the community here worked there, and a lot of people worked there off and on, and a lot of people worked there for a lot longer than I did, 20 years, and a lot of people retired from down there. It was a good place to work, and as I went in there yesterday, everything's altogether different than what it was now. But I certainly wish I still worked there. I still wish I was with all my friends down there. It was just a real good place to work. We didn't know it at the time, but we actually had it made working down there. We made a pretty good little check. Everybody did every week, and it was not that hard to work. But that's all a thing of the past, thanks to Bill Clinton selling us out to China and moving all the textile industry over there. That won't never come back. What it was a large shirt factory, a lot of sewing machines, a lot of cutting tables, that type of stuff was in there. Now it's just a warehouse for another manufacturing plant that's here that builds wrought iron furniture. And if you've been to Walmart and some of the larger furniture places for summertime outdoor furniture, then you have probably sat in some of this furniture that's actually built right here in Wadley. It's wrought iron furniture. It's made very well. I was looking at some of it down there yesterday as I videoed, and they have changed a lot of style, and it's some pretty nice stuff. But anyway, that little advertisement for them will move along. I'm going to tell you, as I said, what happened to me and him. We didn't know what was going on. We found out later that day, and for the next 2 or 3 days, what happened that morning and the previous night, or the previous day and night before. Anyway, he and I spread cloth down there, and at certain times of year, we had to work a lot of overtime. I can't remember if it was the short sleeve season or the long sleeve season, but we had to work a lot of overtime to try to keep ahead of the ladies that were sewing. If we got behind, we had a boss lady down there that didn't mind crawling you up one side and down the other because you had got behind, and her ladies sewing didn't have something to do. So on this particular morning, he and I had came in sometime between about 5:30 and 6 o'clock. Usually the regular hours were like from 7 to 3:30 every day, but he and I were trying to get some extra tables spread so the cutters could cut them and get them over there to where they could sew them together. Because these ladies were on production, and if they didn't make production, then they didn't make a very good check that week. I know I'm going into a lot of detail, but I want to tell you exactly why we were there and what was going on that morning. Anyway, we were walking up and down the table, spreading cloth just as fast as we could go that morning, and it was around about 6 o'clock. And as we were over there coming down the table, we heard the train go to blowing its horn. It wasn't a long blast on the horn, it was just real short, just bump, 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 like that. And it was way off in the distance to begin with, and we turned around and started back up the table. Well, the train kept doing this, and he said to me, he said, something's wrong. Said, listen to that train horn. So I did. I had already heard it, but I went to paying attention to it. So we heard the train getting closer and closer. We estimated that when he started the short blast on the horn, and they didn't quit, he just kept blowing the horn, bump, 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 like just real short, real fast. You may hear it on the upcoming little video that I did, how it sounded. But anyway, we kept listening, and we quit spreading cloth for a few minutes. And it was getting closer and closer. And then it sounded just as it came into town, he sat down on the horn with one long blast. And then we heard him hit the brakes. And if you have ever been around a railroad track, whenever they lock the brakes down, or you may have heard it on TV, when they lock the brakes down on a train to get it stopped as quickly as they can, the wheels on the train quit turning. And it's got a screaming or a squealing sound that it makes, that those metal wheels on the iron rail or whatever the rail's made out of. But anyway, we heard that. We heard him set down on the brakes, and this thing was making a heck of a racket. Coming, it was just right below where we were, just right to the rear of the building. So he and I took off down to the far end of the building, and we looked out these windows. Now, as you'll see in this upcoming video, the windows that we looked out of were about 3 stories high. So we had a real good view of the old train depot. We had a real good view of the railroad track. There was 2 pulpwood yards owned by 2 different companies that were down there behind us. And we could see everything that was going on. And this train, as we got to the windows, the train was still moving, but even the best I remember, there wasn't a lot of daylight that morning. It was still real early. But as the train came sliding into a stop behind the train depot, I believe there was 3 engines pulling this train. And I remember seeing the front wheels and the rear wheels on this first engine. You could actually see the sparks coming off of this thing where the engineer had locked the brakes down trying to get the train stopped. And all this time, the horn was just wide open. All right, we kept standing there watching and had no idea, but that's what he kept saying. He said, something's wrong on the train. Somebody's sick, or somebody's had a heart attack, or something's wrong on that train, or they have hit a car down there at this first crossing they come across. Said, heck, something's wrong. But anyway, the train just kept sitting there, and he cut the engine idle speed down. You could hear it just sitting there idling. And in just a little bit, he took his hand off the horn. So the horn finally quit blowing. But behind the train depot, one engine was completely past it. There was another engine that was partially behind the train depot, and then you could see the third. As I'm remembering this heck in my mind right now, you could see the third engine sitting there, and this it wasn't real black smoke like you see on TV with some of the older engines, but you could see this dark colored diesel smoke coming out the smokestack or chimney or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, he kept sitting there, and the horn was off and everything. So me and this guy, we just kept standing there at the window. We were looking for an ambulance or the police or something to go down there, because we knew this was a signal that he was needing help or something was wrong. But anyway, we kept there for a little bit, and all of a sudden, we saw this man come walking up the railroad track right by the train. He was walking up right by, just within, I'm going to say 2 feet. He was walking on the train track where the rails are. It's kind of mounded up with gravel, and he was walking along in that gravel right there on the edge of it. And every once in a while he would put his hand up on the train as if he was keeping his balance. But in one hand he had something else, and it looked like a rifle or a shotgun. So we didn't have any idea what was going on. We thought there for a minute that maybe it was somebody that had been hunting that morning and almost got hit by the train just walking down a railroad track. And but it wasn't. I'll tell you who it was in just a minute. The guy walked on up to the first engine, and he climbed the little ladder that's on the engine up to the door, and he tried to open it. Or that's what it looked like to us. He put his hand on what looked like the door lever or doorknob or whatever, and he couldn't get it open. And he walked back down, and he walked to the second engine and did the same thing. Then he walked over to the we could see the first engine real plane. As I said, it had gone by the train depot and was sitting there, but it was idling. You could still hear it idling in this building where we were. And he walked up the ladder to it, or the steps, whatever you want to call it, and he went up to the door, and he tried to open it, and he didn't have any luck there. So in just a few seconds, he walked back down, and he just walked on in front of the train. Then he stepped over into the middle of the track, like where the train would be sitting. Okay, so now this guy holding this big stick or a gun or a rifle of some type just walked on down the railroad track, and like I said, about 100 or so yards down the railroad track was this furniture plant that I was telling you about that makes the wrought iron furniture. And he walked right. It had a spur that where they loaded the furniture on the box cars and shipped all over the United States. He walked right on past that spur, and we kept standing in the window watching him. He had on a pair of blue jeans, and it looked like a burgundy-like colored shirt or jacket that was black plaid. You could tell it had large black plaids in it. But anyway, as I said, he just walked right on down the railroad track, and then right below the furniture plant is a curve that will turn to the left. And we stood in the window and watched this guy as he walked down the railroad track on around the curve and out of sight. And as far as I know, he has never been seen again. Now that was what we saw that morning. Now that's what we know actually happened and that we actually saw. Now I'm going to tell you what we found out later that day was going on with the train. Hello, Professor Richard Bryce here of Bryce University. When I begin preparation for one of our world expeditions, I make it a point to drop by the herb shop in Roanoke. They carry all the vitamins and herbal supplements I need to remain healthy in various extreme climates. Whether in the unbearable heat and dust of the Great Pyramid, or walking the frozen tundra of the South Pole, I know I will find everything I need at the herb shop. They also carry Plum Skinny for those in our crew who need to drop a few hundred pounds. Before heading out into the wilderness, no matter what your specialty or interest, whether you are in search of Bigfoot, buried Spanish treasure stolen from the Mayan Empire, or trying to locate the entrance to the Hollow Earth, perhaps recovering a crashed UFO, even fishing for the Loch Ness Monster, or doing something as meaningless as going to work at your job. A little joke there, no one works anymore. But remember, shop the herb shop in Roanoke, Alabama. Give them a call and tell them you found out about them here. Okay, now, let's get back to the story, and I'm going to try to explain what we were told. I don't have any way to back this up with documented proof or anything like that. This was just a story that went around town from other law enforcement people, some I'll say some very well respected people in the community began telling this story, and it got added to a little bit along over about a day or so until the complete story came out. But now what I'm about to tell you is what we were told happened, and as I say, I have no way of completely backing this up with evidence or documented proof. But what had happened somewhere over in Georgia, around Manchester, Georgia, a man had been convicted of murdering several people. I don't remember exactly how many, but he had been convicted of multiple murders over in the state of Georgia. And he was in jail, in some county jail over there, and this was like on a Sunday, was whenever the story began. It was on a Sunday, and on this Monday morning, he was to be transported to a maximum security prison somewhere in Georgia. I'm not sure where. But I'm not sure if he was to be executed or if he had a lengthy prison term over there. But on the Sunday, the day before he was to be transported to the maximum security prison, he escaped from jail. And in escaping, he killed one guard, at least one guard, and he beat another guard very severely over there that afternoon. And the story was that I heard that this other guard died also. And in the meantime, whenever he overpowered them and was making his escape, he got their weapons. He had at least two pistols, and he had one long gun, which was believed to be a rifle. I don't know what caliber. After he killed this guard and beat the other one, he made his way into town over there somewhere and broke into somebody's house and performed another beating on the residents of this house to where he changed clothes. Okay, now some other people saw him some which way whenever he was out in the train yard, and they saw him when he boarded the train. But now he had changed clothes at this time, but they knew that that's who it was because I guess word was going out over radio and TV over there that they had a very bad prisoner to escape. So that's what we saw the guy carrying that morning. Now I'm pretty sure it was that rifle. But anyway, getting back to the story of what we were told by several people that had contacts that would know what was going on and what had happened that day. Okay, some law enforcement agency, I'm sure it was out of Georgia somewhere, contacted Wadley Police Department, but by telephone. Now keep in mind, in those days, Wadley's police car was not radio equipped. This has been around 40 years ago, and radios didn't come to Wadley the way they are now in police cars and computers. We lived kind of a rural place and was not looking for this type of excitement. But anyway, whenever they contacted Wadley Police, they told him the story of what had happened and that they had contacted the railroad. The railroad had contacted the engineer, I'm sure through radio means that they had on the train back then, and told the engineer what was going on. He was instructed to get the entire crew into the engine, lock the door where nobody could get in there, and not to open the door until law enforcement officials took over the train, which would have been in Wadley, Alabama. Anyway, the story goes that the train engineer was told to drive at top speed between wherever it was in Georgia and to Wadley, to not slow down the train to where this man could jump off somewhere else and possibly kill somebody else. Anyway, it was even told what boxcar this man was riding on, and he was spotted in another town somewhere between here and I believe Manchester, Georgia. The door was open on the boxcar, and he was spotted when he went through some town by some police over there. And of course, they radioed or contacted whoever they needed to fill in that information that the man was still on the train. Anyway, as I said, the engineer was instructed to drive I believe like 70 and 80 miles an hour, so he could not jump from the train somewhere and never be found again. But anyway, the train was rerouted, they said, a lot that night and early that morning so they could keep the train moving. What the plan was, whenever they called Wadley Police Department, and the Wadley policeman took the phone call, because as I said, they weren't radio equipped as they are these days in the Wadley police car. He took the call and they told him what had happened. He was instructed to get other members of the police department down there at the wood yard on the railroad track to be sure to take cover. He was also instructed to have men across the bridge, and you can see the bridge in this picture that it is just a few hundred yards from where the train depot was. And what they was hoping that whenever this prisoner was supposed to be in like the 17th boxcar back from the last engine that was pulling the train. So they had a pretty good idea of where he was, and the train was going so fast they didn't think he would try to move on into another car. But anyway, what they were hoping, if they could get the train stopped where they wanted, this 17th boxcar would be in a good range to shoot. They were wanting this man dead. That was what we had heard. The orders came to Wadley Police Department to shoot on sight. To do not try to take this man prisoner. He was too dangerous. He was heavily armed. That the Wadley police were told was the minute he steps off the train, shoot him down. Don't take any chances on him. So what was supposed to have happened, there was supposed to have been shooters across the bridge. There was supposed to be shooters in the wood yard that were taking cover behind these stacks of pulpwood and boxcars filled with pulpwood in the train depot, which is a solid building. It's like a concrete building. So we were told the policeman was authorized to deputize any member of the community that would take part of this. And a lot of people say, well, I just don't think I could shoot somebody down like that. Back in those days, there were a couple of old guys that were World War II veterans, and they would have had absolutely no problem at all. All you'd had to do was to give them the order to shoot, and the guy would have never left Wadley. As I said, the train, when it crossed the trestle, that was told to the police. When he crosses the trestle, he'll begin blowing the horn with short blasts to let you know where he's at. As he comes into town, to maybe confuse the prisoner or by setting up this loud noise with a train horn and everything, the horn would be one solid blow until the train stopped. And that was exactly what happened. But when the Wadley police received this call and was told what dangerous type of a criminal was aboarded this train, and they were bringing him right to Wadley for the Wadley police to take action on this man, the Wadley police jumps in the police car and leaves town. He doesn't tell anybody what's going on. He just gets in the police car, cranks up, and leaves town as fast as he can. And I'll get back to that in just a moment or two. Whenever the train came into town, and as I said earlier, was blowing the horn, that was the signal for everybody to be ready to be watching. And the minute this guy stepped off the train to shoot him down, he was just too dangerous to try to apprehend. Or back in those days. Nowadays, I'm sure they would have a mental health official, and probably Red Cross would be there to set up for him some coffee and donuts, but and try to give him a mental evaluation and some therapy, so maybe he wouldn't do this again. But in those days, that ain't the way it worked, and they just wanted this guy out of the way because of what he had done in the past. But anyway, what happened? The guy came into town, just as I said earlier. He got off the train. He walked up to the engines, tried to open the doors, and he might have been going to kill them. He might have been going to make them to move the train on. I don't know. But the last time the guy was seen, as I said earlier, he was walking down the railroad track and walked around the curve, which was in a very heavily wooded area, and he's never been seen again, unless he moved here to Wadley and got elected mayor, or they made him police chief or something like that. What I wanted to tell you about the police car, when the policeman left town in the police car, he didn't just leave town, he went to another county. He went about 22 miles up the road before he stopped the car, and I guess he got out at some gas station or something, because we didn't have cell phones and that type of stuff back in those days. He got out somewhere and I guess called his family or some of his friends or something to come pick him up, and he left the car in Clay County, in a little town up there in Clay County, which was about 20 or 22 miles from Wadley, and never told anybody what was going on or anything. But that was just kind of a funny experience that we had with a policeman here one time. But now I want you to keep in mind that this happened about 40 years ago and has nothing to do with any of the policemen that we have here today. Anyway, that was the day that the Dragnet almost got put out in Wadley, and there wasn't anybody like Elliot Ness or Robert Stack or Kevin Costner or any of those guys that have played Untouchable. I guess the policeman was untouchable as he was unfindable. He got out of town as quick as he could. And as far as I know, he never came back. And he also has never been seen until this day. And that was this Alabama adventure that took place in Wadley about 40 years ago now. And during the filming of this, I ran up on a volunteer fireman at one of the locations where I was doing some video, and I asked him if he remembered this event in the history of Wadley, and he laughed and said he sure did, and a lot of the older residents here do. But that was this Alabama adventure, and I hope you kind of found it a little amusing. It was real funny back whenever it happened and everything. I would also like to add and to dedicate this video to the memory of 3 very good friends I had while I worked at Clegg Manufacturing, place where this little event took place that morning. Of course, the first one would be L.C. Elliott, who was the man that I was working with the morning whenever this happened and that I worked with a lot down there. Secondly would be to Durrell Sweat. He was the head mechanic, a very good friend of mine. I knew his family very well. And also to Dorothy Kennedy, who was the boss lady I told you about one time. But Dorothy had a job to do, and she kept the plant running when a lot of other plants closed down. Miss them all very much, and I am very glad that our paths crossed in this life. We hope you'll tune in for the next Alabama adventure. I'd like to say that Alabama Bigfoot Society is run completely out of pocket. I'd also like to say hello to my granddaughter Madison, as I always do. And if you like this video, and if you like what we're doing down here searching for Bigfoot, would like for you to subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe. And as always, we'll be looking for you next time on the next Alabama adventure, getting close to Bigfoot.